Michelle Mott from Inspiring Solutions, and we are delighted that you took the time, you made the time to join us for this month's Free Friday webinar called Taking Time to Manage Your Time Without Stress. We've had a wonderful turnout at the 9 o'clock webinar, and we are delighted to see so many familiar faces or repeat attendees, but we also know that we also have some very first-time attendees. So to make the most out of our hour, we want to make sure that you understand how to use the technology. And if you have any technical difficulties, my one-star OnStar guiding direction from Dana is standing by and can help answer any questions that you might have. Feel free to jot down her phone number. If you're watching it, it's on the screen. If you're just listening in, it's 515-221-2688. So the WebEx is the platform that we use, and you'll see on the upper middle part of your control panel a place you can zoom in and zoom out to make the content viewer section, which is where the PowerPoint's being displayed, as large as you'd like. And then there on the right-hand side are some additional panels that you can see the participants, and the reason that we want you to access that is a chat box area. The chat box area is a place where you can write down or type in messages to me, to questions. You can actually change the send to all participants if that's an option, or at least host and presenter. And then type in the blue bordered box a message, and then hit send, and like I just did, you will see a little correspondence. So let's go ahead and get started. But prior to this webinar, you may or may not have had the exposure to Inspiring Solutions, but over the last 25 plus years, we have been doing organizational design and talent development for organizations around the country in the areas of strategic planning, leadership development, employee engagement. Also, many of you might be trainers or consultants yourself, and we have a resource library that you can access and actually purchase tools to use, books, videos, e-learning tools, and online assessments. We happen to be an authorized partner for Everything DISC and the 5 Behaviors of a Cohesive Team. Attitudes in the Workplace is my brand based on my book. So let's start with an overview of the different programs and products that we offer. If you'd like, Dana would be happy to mail you a copy. Otherwise, you can go out to our website, inspiringsolutions.com, and download a copy. The goals for this particular hour, as always, is to deliver some type of motivational on one of our programs. But I wanted to make sure that you knew this one was going to be on time management, featuring one of our inspiring programs and or one of our products. This webinar is on the value of time management, the impact on your stress, 18 stress reducers, and we're going to spend most of our time exploring the best practices for time management in 12 different areas. The handout that we're going to be using was attached to your instruction, and feel free to access that and reference that as we take notes and do some activities. After this webinar, you'll be asked to fill out a brief survey to offer comments. I'm going to also make some offers to you, and if you'd like to request, Dana will follow up with you afterwards, as well as any suggestions for future topics. So let's get started with an opening quote. Would you agree the past is history? We can't do anything about it but learn from it. Our future is a mystery. That makes that an opportunity for you to learn and make changes. But today is special. Today is a gift. That's why we call it the present. What if you were given 1 more hour each day? How would you spend it? On the first exercise in your workbook, what I'd like you to do in the space provided is jot that down. I'd also like you to come over in the chat box of the webinar I'd like for you to write down something, what you would do. And it could be something that you would do by yourself. It could be something that you would do with other people. It could be something you do at work or at home. And then hit send, and like I just did there, it will be viewable by me, and I'll capture those for you as well. I'll give you a couple minutes to do that now. Oh, Heidi's going to do yoga. Good for you. And most likely, whatever it was, whether you wrote it or thought about it, it's probably reflecting something relating to your personal life. These are some of the folks that are important in my inner circle: parents, my brothers, family, my grandkids, as I mentioned, golf. And the good news and bad news. Good news is you now have the insight to what many people think about at the end of their life, which means at the end of a person's life, they don't look back and say, gosh, I wish I would have worked more. They would say something like, I wish I would have spent more time with my family, or I would have taken better care of my health. The bad news is, unfortunately, I don't have that one extra hour. But you now are aware of what you would like to do in your days, and what I can do with our time remaining is give you some strategies and some insights that you can use to be more effective and carve out time, or I should say make time, to do those things. A benefit for going through this hour is to help you know where you are now, where you want to go in the future with your time and with your life, and how you get there. And that's one of the strategies for this class. So what is stress? Stress is our physical, emotional, and behavioral reaction to any demand or change that we believe challenges our resources or capacity to cope. Two basic sources of stress can be our life changes, retirement, aging, job changes, marriage, divorce, having children, death, as well as just our daily hassles. There's an exercise that I heard Stephen Covey present once to a group of high school parents. And he said, if I were to give you a bucket, and in that bucket you were to place stones, boulders, rocks, pebbles, all different sizes, which would you put in first to maximize the space in the bucket? And if you would, go ahead and use the chat box on the right-hand side and type in your response. All right. Well, a couple of you typed in the correct answer response. The larger the rock or boulder, the first it should go in, which means that the most significant sized rocks will fill up more of the space, allowing then, as you put in the pebbles or sand, to filter through. And what that means as it relates to time management is you should do or focus on getting your largest or most important tasks or assignments done first, followed by smaller tasks that can kind of fit into and between the larger tasks. And I use this as a visual explanation of how we should be thinking about our day. And to help you apply that on the next worksheet, I'm going to have you complete, or at least get a good start, on my routine task schedule. This exercise will kind of help you to identify what are your boulders. What are those things that you must do on a daily, weekly, and monthly basis? For instance, starting at the top, Jot down things that you know that you always need to do each day. It could be emails, phone calls, it could be paperwork, it could be a meeting that you always have. Jot down also who the person is that's responsible to holding you accountable. It could be your boss, it could be your customers or clients or patients or however you want to refer to them as. And then jot down also from a time sensitivity when those are due by. So maybe it's something that has to be done first thing in the morning. Maybe it has to be done by noon. Maybe it has a 2 o'clock cutoff. It could also be something that goes outside of your workday, and maybe it's something that you need to have done by the end of your evening, so by 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock. I know I'm not going to give you enough time to complete these exercises, but I want to give you at least a good start, and I would encourage you, whether you're watching this by yourself or many of our clients are telling us that they're getting a group of people together in training rooms or classrooms, I would encourage you as a class to stay afterwards and spend maybe 15, 10 minutes completing the assignments to really make the best transfer of knowledge to your routine. The next section in this worksheet looks at your weekly tasks, and I realize it only has Monday through Friday. You could certainly add Sunday to the left, and you could write Saturday on the right side, and write down those things that you need to always do on a particular day of the week. For instance, hey, today's garbage day, so I know that I need to always put out my garbage every morning or end of Thursday to make sure it gets picked up. Maybe you have weekly huddles. I know many of my healthcare clients have a 10 to 15-minute weekly huddle to get everybody excited and focused. And so jot down on that as a kind of a must-do on a particular day of the week. And then the last section looks at what are the monthly tasks that you are expected to do. Maybe it's something that you have to have done by the first of the month. I have a tickler file for my bills, and I have in each of the tickler sections my records, so I know when a particular either professional or business bill or personal bill are due. But this gives you an idea that by the 15th of the month, maybe you have to have your taxes done. And I know that's an annual thing, but as a business owner, I have to have all my payroll taxes paid by. So again, spend time with this routine task schedule, but it will give you an outstanding look at what are the must-dos, what are the boulders, what are the have-to-dos, and then you can fill in afterwards. I'd like for you to think about stress in a new way. It doesn't actually exist until somebody creates it. And we have met the enemy, and the enemy is us. Would you agree? I'd like for you on the next worksheet to fill out whether you feel stressed for time or not. There are 20 different aspects of time that could cause you stress. Things like procrastination, misplaced items. We're going to talk about how you need to have systems in place. Interruptions, which is again something we're going to explore. Maybe you have an inability to say no. You don't want to let people down, but know that no is a complete sentence. Jot down if you feel that having unrealistic time frames or deadlines. Perfectionism is a great quality, but if you let it consume you, you might spend more time on a project than necessary. Or as I say to my team, you need to evaluate your return on your investment, and that would be your time. If you're feeling fatigued, exhausted, or lack of stamina, perhaps you're not exercising. You know, like Heidi and others wrote down, maybe you need to make sure that you make time for exercise. Creativity is something that's important, especially in large, cumbersome, complicated projects. And you need to realize when your prime time is. Prime time means it's when you're at your best. Maybe it's the morning. Maybe it's in the afternoon. Maybe you come alive after kids going to bed. But learning how to use your prime time and your creativity can help you. Number 10 on this list talks about maybe you have an inflexibility. You always have to have things a certain way, or you get upset if the plan is not executed as originally written. Well, there are no guarantees, and I think being able to be flexible with yourself, with a plan, with other people will help you with your stress. Number 11 talks about something that's near and dear to my heart. My mom passed away of Alzheimer's, a very nasty disease, and I Two, I'm fearful that that's going to be my destiny, and so I'm doing everything I possibly can to exercise my brain as often as I can, but I know that I also need to have systems in place, things that I will share with you, that I have my key holder so that every time I walk into my house, before I put my purse down, I have already placed my keys on a rack. I also want you to realize that having social time outside of work is important for you. It might be a way that you relax. I'm going to the lake this weekend and doing some gardening. That's going to be one of my relaxation. 14 talks about maybe you have a hard time of letting go, always have to do things yourself, and especially if you're a manager, you're going to need to learn some trust in helping people do things on their own, staying true with children. If you've got kids coming home after school, especially over the summer months, you're going to learn to delegate. We're going to talk more about that. Number 15 makes mention that maybe you're not having a good diet, so making sure that that's a part of your health. If you frequently are late, one of my New Year's resolutions was to recognize that being 15 minutes early is on time. It gives me a little chance to catch my breath and be focused. 17 talks about difficult listening. If that's something that is a problem for you, I invite you to join next month's webinar. It's going to be on listening as a gift. It's one of the best things that you can do in a relationship, yet we don't spend time learning how to do it. 18 again talks about exercise. 19, how well do you manage conflict? And the last talks about you feel as though you aren't being recognized or rewarded, whether it's from your boss or whether it's from your customers. Maybe you need to just recognize that you can feel a sense of pride in your work or your day by knowing that you've given it your best, you were focused, you were productive, and you've given it all. So if you tally up those two columns by checking the number of scores, 10 or more means that stress in your life is reaching dangerous levels, and we're glad you're here. 5 to 10 score means that you are dealing with difficult, demanding lifestyle, and so you can benefit also from practicing some of our strategies. And I want to congratulate you if you checked anything less than 5 because of the fact that you are recognizing that ways of managing your stress is important to help you be more energetic, productive, and accomplished. On the next 2 pages, I offered the top 18 stress reducers, and what I'll encourage you to do is kind of glance through this list and circle any of the reducers that you want to use, and then I'd like for you to also type it in the chat box, making a commitment to making good use of not only your time, but reducing your stress. Number 11 is one of mine because I have 2 Labradors. They love to wake me up early in the morning for breakfast, but more importantly, they love to go for WALKs. Now, any of you who have dogs know that why I just spelt that, because they're nearby. I have a home-based business, and I want to make sure that not only do I get them exercise, but I give myself some exercise. So I'm going to commit to not only waking up earlier for my own well-being, but for some exercise and some quality time with my dogs. So once you go through those 2 pages, what I'd like you to do is simply jot down in the chat box something that you would like to and commit to doing to manage your stress. All right, I hear number 4 from Heidi. Number 4 is not being afraid to say no. Thank you. That is wonderful. I think women especially tend to overexert themselves, and we can easily overcommit ourselves at work and at home. Others coming in include recognizing that I need to be more creative with my life, and I love that approach. Thank you. That attitude of creativity puts a new spin on stress, on time, and your productivity. So again, I give this to you as a resource And I think a lot of times knowing that time is inevitable, stress can also be inevitable, but you don't have to be a victim to it if you learn to make good choices. What I want to do now is introduce to you, as I mentioned, an online resource that we provide in our training as well as to our customers. And in this particular online assessment, we offer a way that you can truly take an assessment, it's not a test, and identify what your strengths and opportunities for managing your time. You can order it directly off of our website, inspiringsolutions.com, or afterwards, if you want to get a sample of it, just fill out the evaluation and let Dana know you're interested, or you can even send you a link. When completing a series of questions, the report will come back with an overview of 12 different dimensions of time. This happens to be the graph that illustrates your level of mastery. And this particular exercise asks to put a star next to a couple of the areas you're doing well at. In this example, it was priorities and meetings. And then circle a couple of the areas that you would like to improve upon. So it gives you very specific feedback, not related to any different time management tool like iPhones or your Samsung, or maybe you use a day planner or Franklin planner to manage your time. It's not system sensitive. It's truly 12 different aspects of time management, which is where I want to spend the rest of our time together. I'd like for you to think about how effective you are in those dimensions. And today, recognizing that time management is really self-management, habits form good time management practices, and the first step might be to change your thinking. I'm going to give you some of the ways in which I think about time and the techniques that work for me, but I want you to think about what's going to work best for you. It's going to be kind of like going through the Bayline. On the next several pages, I'm going to first of all help you to be aware of what those are, and then we're going to give you some techniques. So if you would, on the next page, go through and circle next to those 15 different areas, which do you find to be time wasters and which tend to be time masters? And I'll give you a couple minutes to do that before we move forward. All right, so from that, you can see that there are opportunities for improvement. What I'm going to do is share with you some strategies that you can better use your time at work and at home. Einstein's definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, yet expecting different results, which means in order for you to get more out of a day, better use of your time, you need to change up, and that's what I'm going to expose you to. So the first category is attitudes. As many of you know, I do a lot of work in the area of attitudes, and I believe it is a choice. You can choose to use it, waste it, or make the most out of your day. And there's a quote on this slide that says our ability to control our time is directly related to our attitude towards controlling our environment. I think that time, life, is really about self-management. It can be internal or external. It's what you think about. It's also what you do, because time is life. You don't get a second chance. One of my friends said, life ain't no dress rehearsal. So what I'd like you to do is take or make a good choice. And if you want additional information about my book, Attitude, the Choice is Yours, it's a great inspirational read. It's got interactive exercises. I found that it's not only beneficial for individuals to read through, but you can discuss it as a book club. It's a great gift. If you've got, this morning I mentioned, if you've got a teenager that's going to be graduating from high school or college, it's an awesome read. In fact, my stepdaughter, Mandy, was the very first person to have read my book, and she came up afterwards and said it was phenomenal. She said it really helped her feel as though she has much more confidence and direction in her life. So you can, again, go out and order this on our website, and I'm happy to autograph it, and if you tell me who it's for, I'll even personalize it. Would you agree that time does not fly? You can't save it. You can't make it up. Yet oftentimes we say it. Everyone is given the same allowance in minutes, seconds, and hours. And how we spend it is truly ours. In my book, I give several tune-up techniques, and the one that I wanted to, there's a couple that I wanted to focus in on. And the first is listen to your self-talk. You complain about not having enough time. I always get a kick out of people saying, oh man, Christmas has come up so soon this year. Well, from all practical purposes, December 25th has always been Christmas. Are you making it a priority? The other part of self-talk is, what do you think about your life? What do you think about your time? Are you using it? Are you wasting it? Do you feel you can control it, or do you feel as though you are a victim? And then the other technique I want you to take action on is stop shoulding on yourself. Now, oftentimes I think that I said something nasty. What I meant was, how many times does a voice go off and you say, oh man, I really should have done this, or I really started this project sooner? Well, you can never should have done anything. You've either done it or you haven't. But what you can do is transfer it to action. What I'd like you to do is think about something you've been telling yourself this week that you should do. Maybe it's something that you need to do yet before the weekend at work starts. So maybe it's a project, maybe it's a phone call, or maybe it's something that you should do over the weekend. This is a great time to clean out. It could be something that it should be looking at your home. Maybe it's cleaning out gardening. Maybe it's cleaning out closets. And what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to jot down that either on your handout, or I'd like you also to jot it down in the chat box. All right. So some of these can be actions that you take with each other, or more importantly, if you want to tell someone what you want to do, they will hold you accountable. The second is about setting goals. I've always been a big proponent of setting goals. What you've just done, whether you shared it in the chat box or not, is you've thought about something you wanted to accomplish and then you wrote it down. There's great power in writing it down because it starts to be real. You can also look at it and reference it, and it helps you to remind yourself of what you set out to do. Clarify the roles and prioritize your goals. In my book, I talk about what are the roles that are responsible or important to you, whether it's with your family, with your friends, with your job. And then think about how you'd like to be reminded or remembered in those roles. And then when you write them down, smack yourself, making sure that it's specific, it's measurable, it could be date sensitive. Make it that it's something you can do, it's achievable, yet make it exciting and it's challenging. And these are the different aspects of our life So I would encourage you to think about one of those aspects and again, write down a specific, measurable, achievable, yet challenging goal for yourself. I know that I'm going to be meeting next week with my financial planner, and as it relates to wealth, I would like to create some very specific retirement goals, and I'd like to know how much I'm going to need, what I need to save, what do I need to not buy or do. So let me give you again some time to jot down and write down a specific goal in one of those aspects of your life. And again, I'm going to encourage you to write this in a place. I have a tile in my kitchen where I write down the priorities that I have, and I use this as an ongoing reminder of what I'd like to do this calendar year. The next area is about establishing priorities. And like I mentioned, one way is to clarify and prioritize your life. Sometimes life can feel like we are balancing plates on top of a stick. And I'd like for you to think about, where do you need to exert some time and energy? Maybe your job is suffering. Maybe you're a little distracted by things that are going on at home. Maybe your home life needs some focus. Maybe you've got some issues with children or with your spouse. But learning how to prioritize your life can truly help you feel less stress and more balanced. The late, great Stephen Covey, you can tell I'm a great proponent of his work. One of the 7 habits is to put first things first, which means in all the generations of time management, he boiled it down into basically understanding and practicing how to focus and execute around priorities. One way of doing that is to use this quadrant of important and urgent. Important things are things that must need your attention. Urgent tend to be more time sensitive. And in this illustration, you'll see that there's 4 different quadrants of activities. For instance, in the first quadrant in the upper left-hand corner, those things referred to as crisis. They may be perceived as crisis because maybe it's a fire or maybe it's an emergency. Maybe it could be a client calling with a complaint that you need to drop everything and get down to business. Second are value-based activities. Most likely those things that you wanted to do in that 25th hour could be value-based. Things spent with family because they're important, yet oftentimes no one is asking for it or as a deadline. I think of planning a vacation is a value-based activity. Third, in the lower left-hand corner, are things that are trivial. You think they're important, but you think they're urgent, but they may not be important. For instance, responding to certain text messages. Your phone can be a major distraction through your workday. Certain emails, if they're junk, can be trivia. And then finally, the fourth are things that are absolutely time wasters. Those can be junk mail. It could be junk snail mail. And one of the best practices that I would encourage you to set up is a junk filter. In your email, if you can set a rule as things come into your email, you can either unsubscribe, that's the best way, or if it's something that's just coming in that you've not accepted, it can go and be filtered into your junk folder, and then you can spend time either in a block of time deleting those or not spending time at all. Because I truly believe we will make time for things that we believe are important. And those things are oftentimes valuable. The next area we want to explore is the area that oftentimes trips us up if we don't actually look at it. It's not planning time, it's analyzing time. Excuse me. One way of doing that is using a time log. And if you're interested, feel free to request this in our evaluation, and Dana will be happy to send you what that tool is. But let me explain what it basically accomplishes. First of all, you ask, how am I doing? It's taking a look at how is it that you are using your time. You keep the time log for about 2 weeks, and then you lump like things together using graphs and charts. And by doing so, you can ask yourself 3 questions. What you think you are doing, what you ought to be doing, and what you are actually doing. One example is the amount of time you spend getting ready for work. From the shower to breakfast to the commute, you might be surprised how much time you're spending in the bathroom or in the car. And learning how to better prioritize or use that block of time might be insightful. For instance, a commute is a commute, but maybe you listen to blogs, or you have a CD that you listen to music that can kind of help you with your stress. When you think about getting ready for work, maybe you organize your closets. I have a pretty good system for my closet, so I know where all my coats are, my jackets. I have all my colors somewhat coordinated. So that can be a system that you set up to help you make better use of your time. This slide shows you what the time log actually looks like. You'd fill in starting at 7 o'clock, what are the things that you're doing, how important they are, and if you have interruptions during that time. The 5th area we're going to explore is timing or planning. When you think about planning, what are the ways in which you are proactively planning your time? Many of you probably have a planner, whether it's a written or maybe it's an electronic planner. Use it, and we're going to talk a little bit about the best uses for that. When I put together a project team, or in some cases when I'm working with clients, I'll have them organize a process improvement team. I would suggest that at the start of a project, you mind map, which basically gives you kind of a roadmap or a blueprint for all the different moving parts, and then you can divide up how you're going to complete that project. And remember the 5 Ps, that prior preparation prevents poor performance. As I mentioned, this is an example of a day planner. So whether it's electronic or whether it's in your planner, on the left-hand side, you make your to-do list, you prioritize it, and here's where you really have to discipline yourself to identify in order of importance what you need to do first, second, and it really takes discipline, even though it might not take very long, or maybe it's a difficult project, to not allow the seconds or third priorities to enter your world. How much time you think it's going to take? There's where you actually block out on the far right column when you're going to spend time doing it. Normally we think about blocking off our calendars for meetings, but I'm going to encourage you to block off time to work on significant or difficult projects. For instance, yesterday, Dana and I needed to record an e-learning course, and so we blocked out from 3:30 to 5 to record that, and it was truly the way that we coordinated our schedules. Speaking of schedules, on the next page, if you're following along and taking notes, we're going to talk about scheduling. Scheduling is when you are needing to block out your time or time with other people. I think being specific means giving it a date, a time, not only to begin, but how long is the meeting going to be, because there's no sense in indicating a time and a date so everyone can plan around it. Share those schedules with others. We use Microsoft Outlook that coordinates nicely with our contact relationship management tool called ACT. And it allows us to not only send out invitations, but it can also align and populate our calendar. Even the best laid plans, however, can go amok, so be flexible. And if you need to, post it in the workplace for everyone's view. In our workspace, for all 3 of us, we also have Sarah, our intern, working with us this summer. She is responsible for keeping our Remarkable calendar up to date. That is a Remarkable, which means she can update it. And at a glance, we see 4 months, dates, projects, deadlines. She also has a flip chart for each month. So in the particular month of May, we have 4 specific areas that we look at as an ongoing focus collectively. Each of you probably have some type of organizing system. It could be your phone, which I really think is not just a phone. It's truly a mini computer. And I'd like for you to think about your phone as a mini computer. And it doesn't matter whether you use an iPhone or a Galaxy. Learning how to maximize the use of that phone, regardless of how much you spend on it, is only as good as you use it. Now, some of you might also have a written format or written process, and again, use whatever you can reference and help you manage your dates. All right, I'm going to do, usually when I do this as a workshop, we stop and have people buddy up and kind of do a show and tell, because most likely have your phone not too far from you, which can be also a time distractor in training. But then we talk about what's working, what's not, how can you better use of that device. So I want to move on now to interruptions. Interruptions can be anything as small as a notification coming up on your phone that you've got a text message. It could be an interruption such as a phone call. It could be coming into your office. So first of all, I want you to ask who and what are those interruptions. Be honest with yourself and others. If you don't have time to spend quality time listening to a person's concerns, be honest with them and say, you know what, can we reschedule or can we set up a time to talk about this, because right now I'm really distracted and I want to give you the quality time you deserve. And like my golf coach said on and off the golf course, focus, focus, focus. Focus on the immediate shot. That's what it means in golf. Focus on the immediate conversation. Focus on the immediate project. Don't let or allow interruptions to distract you. You might have drop-in visitors. If you're in a cubicle environment or maybe you're in a workspace where there's a lot of people, learn how to set up your office or set up appointments. I tend to set up a lot of calls because it allows me to dedicate time, whether it's with Dana or Sarah or with clients, to not have interruptions during my day. As some of you indicated, you liked the saying no. Tell them why. I can't do it now, but I can work on it next week. Be honest, be firm, because I think a lot of times you can overextend yourself and not do a good job if you aren't managing your workload, and sometimes you will miss deadlines if you overcommit. The next area we're going to explore are phone communication, and it could be your cell phone, it could be your landline, but I want to give you a couple of tips for using the phone. If you have voicemail, especially as it relates to work, make sure that you update it. For instance, if you're going to be on vacation, and this is true also with email communication, let them know that you're going to be out of the office until a certain date. And if they have immediate needs, to press 0 if it's a phone, or maybe you give somebody else's name or email if it's an email out of office. Because typically when we either send an email or when we leave a voicemail, we expect a response fairly soon. Another tip is to schedule a conference call, like I mentioned. Busy people oftentimes need to have that commitment. And then finally, know that there's other ways of communicating, phone, email, or good old-fashioned face-to-face meetings. How many of you have ever been in a meeting where minutes were taken and hours were wasted? I would love to know how much time in a given day corporate America spends in meetings. And by definition, a meeting is with 2 or more people. So it doesn't necessarily have to be with a large group, and it doesn't even have to be face-to-face. We are, in a sense, having a meeting this hour. There's, from what I can tell from the participants, there are 22 people spending time this hour. And you need to be good stewards of that time. So I want to give you ways in which you can be a good participant or meeting leader. First and foremost is to have an agenda. I think that it's helpful to have agendas sent out ahead of time, like Dana sends out in our email communication. We give advance notification for our upcoming webinars. We also send out with our instructions what to expect. When I started this webinar, I reviewed what our topics for this hour would be because it helps everybody kind of shift their focus. I'm always a practice of starting and ending on time, regardless if everybody's there or not. One of my pet peeves is waiting for other people to come and you start late. And what that's doing is two things. One is you're penalizing the people who honored your request and started on time. And secondly, for those that are coming late, you are enabling or others to say, you know what, it's okay if you're late, we'll wait for you. And I guarantee you, if you have standing meetings at a certain time, the next time you announce a meeting to start at 9 o'clock, most likely you'll have people straggling in because they know you're always going to wait. In meetings, make sure you clarify expectations of others. In other words, if you're attending a meeting and you think, oh, great, I'm not sure why I have to go to these meetings, you have a responsibility, if the leader hasn't clarified it, to ask, why do I need to be at this meeting? Okay, now I understand that, so I can be prepared. And then as a meeting leader, your role is to focus the right people, making sure that the people are in attendance so that you can make decisions and move forward, keeping them on topic, so using the agenda can help them stay focused at the right time and even the right way. I always like to use flip charts when I'm training or when I'm in a meeting because it helps people to capture ideas in a shared visual aid. If you're interested, again, we have several templates that we recommend that we use and our clients use. This is the agenda where you indicate who's to be in attendance, what the topics are, who's going to be talking about those, how much time, so you can manage it if multiple people are contributing. And rather than taking what I call minutes, we do believe that it should be important to document action. In other words, what are you going to do or what decisions did you make? Who's going to be responsible for carrying out the assignment and when is it due? The 10th area that we're going to explore is your work area. Now, I believe that we spend a lot of time wasting time looking for stuff. Barbara Hempel wrote a book called Taming the Paper Tiger at Work. Studies have found that the average person spends over 150 hours per year, almost 1 month, looking for information. What that means is you need to have a good system to work or a good work area. Some of you can relate to this image if you have lots of clutter. Clutter is the #1 strain on our brain because we don't have focus. In fact, we oftentimes, at least on a quarterly basis, I'm going to suggest, we intentionally spend time cleaning our office. Many of you might not also be able or should clean your office, but maybe you need to clean your workspace or at your home. One thing that you might recognize is that you are visually spatial. I know my mom used to say I'm special, but now I know that I am visually spatial. What that means is if you have to see things to remember things, that is something you need to be aware of, but having a good system. For instance, one way to do that in your workplace is to evaluate the efficiency using 3 zones. The assignment is to look at your workspace and identify where your A zone is. So the A zone is the space in which whatever you are working on is. Nothing else is in that zone. It could be a document. It could be your computer. It could be a phone. But you need to have a cleared out space for you to focus on your immediate task. Outside of the A zone, within arm's reach, are items in your B zone. These are things that you need to have access quickly when you are working on or talking with someone. Certain files, for instance, I have a tickler file system by month that has the projects that I'm working on with clients. So I know during the month of June which clients I'm going to be working on. So if I ever have a conference call with them, I can go to my hanging tickler file and pull out their client folder while talking on the phone, and I might even be looking on my computer. But that's your B zone items. C zones items are outside yet the B zone, but are commonly shared by other people. In other words, we have a filing system that has all of our different past clients that we hope to work with in the future again, so we can go back to it when they become an active client. We also have a resource for all of our programs that we can access, along with a lot of our books and resources. But those are in a storage area in file cabinets outside of my immediate work area. Oh, this is a cute cartoon. It talks about how many of you do have a piling system and not a filing system. It's okay to have a pile, but make sure that you know how to access and what are in those piles. Maybe you need to label them. Maybe you need to have cubby holes, but make sure that you are organized. And if they are going to be used or shared by others, it's a system that everyone understands and respects and use it efficiently. Then the next page, again in your workbook, we're going to talk about 5 more. The next one is correspondence and paperwork. Now, when I talk about correspondence, I'm talking about both email and snail mail communication. Practice handling each document once. Read it, then delete it, toss it, respond to it, or file it. And I think it's important, again, to have even folders within your Outlook. I have folders set up for my travel. I have folders set up for my clients. I even have, like I mentioned, a junk folder so that without even looking at it, some of my emails go directly into the junk folder. And regarding email communication, avoid using all caps when you're writing notes because it seems to others as though you are shouting. The 12th dimension of time mastery we want to explore is on delegation. First of all, I want you to think about the benefits of delegation. We might not delegate because we can do it faster than it's going to take us to explain somebody how to do it. Or maybe it's something that we really kind of like doing. We just don't want to give that up. Well, I want you to think about it differently. What would be the benefit if you let go and shared that task with someone else? It might be, if presented correctly, a form of recognition. Because how do you feel when someone asks you for your help? You feel like they trust you, that they want you to be a player or a team contributor. For you, the benefit is it allows you to do something that's maybe more complicated, or maybe it's a better use of your time, your talents. And from the overall team perspective, I always say that realistically, it's going to help you take a day off now and then because you don't always have to do things. The last tip that I want to give to you as the value of delegation is that when you are delegating to someone, whether you're delegating to, you have a manager, if you're delegating to a teammate, you're delegating to your boss, maybe you're asking your child or your spouse to do something, you're sharing the authority, but you're not sharing the responsibility. You ultimately have the responsibility to making sure that it gets done. And what's key is to make sure that you follow up for 2 reasons. One is, if they've done it, they've followed through on your request, and they don't ever hear back from you, what's the likelihood that they're going to help you out again? Not very. So you need to thank them. Thank you for doing that task. Thanks for putting that on your priority list. And if they haven't done it, you need to ask them why. Because maybe that was too cumbersome and they needed some assistance. Now, to properly delegate, on the next page on the slide, I've got 6 steps. And to help you remember this, I'm going to just give you some key words. The first part of delegating something is to explain the why. There is a difference between dumping and delegating. Don't give them a task just because it's going to keep them busy. Even though it might not be a pleasant experience, like filing, it's a very important part of your efficiency. Second step is to define the results. In other words, what do you want them to do? Help them to understand. You want them to compile a document. I just sent off a request this morning to Sarah. I was compiling a bunch of flip charts from my ER Med-Surg audit this past week and brought home a whole bunch of flip charts. And what I asked her to do is prepare the appendix. The appendix is going to be all of the specific ideas that I'm in turn going to look at and make my recommendations. So the third, that kind of follows into the third, are the authorities, do and don'ts. Transcribe the items that were given. Don't edit, don't summarize, because sometimes people get offended if they don't see their ideas written or documented. Agree upon the deadline, which I now realize that I don't think I gave her a deadline, so after this I'm going to have to ask her what her school schedule, because she's taking a schedule or a class, and I don't want to impede on that. Ask for feedback, and then finally set up controls. So when can I check to see the progress to avoid making the final deadline your first chance to look at it only to find out that it was done incorrectly? Time is money. What is it that you're going to be willing to delegate to your coworkers, to other departments, your boss, your spouse, and children? The 13th aspect is procrastination. Now, we should have done this earlier, but I want to make sure I leave you with some just-in-time management techniques. My mom was a school teacher, and she had me do my tough assignments first. I didn't like to do history and science, but I love to do math. So she said, do your science and history assignments first, and then treat yourself with doing the math. Now, some of you may not like math, but that wouldn't be a treat for you. But in my world, I would oftentimes procrastinate doing the tough assignments and do the trivial, or in our example earlier, we do the minor things, not the important things. The 14th dimension is to look at your ability to manage crisis. When I say crisis, what I want you to do is think about who the crisis is coming from. If it's your child who's lost something and can't find something, don't necessarily let their crisis be your crisis. As a parent, your role is to teach them to be independent. So if you are an enabler, you need to learn to let go and not own other people's crisis. Not to say that you can't help, but don't take on more than you should choose. If you are in a crisis situation, ask yourself, what's the worst thing that could happen? A lot of times when I'm traveling, there are flight delays, and I always think, okay, the worst thing that could happen is I miss my connection. And then if that does, what am I going to do? But I don't get ahead of myself. Breathe. If you're under a crisis situation, taking a deep breath can help you manage your stress and think clearly on your crisis. Keeping things in perspective. Things could always be worse. And then the last dimension of time management I want to give to you is not just your ability to manage time, but how you oftentimes affect others. If you are in a team environment, you need to be aware of how you might be affecting other people's time. And occasionally ask, how do what I do or don't do affect other people? And I truly believe what you give, you will get. In other words, if you're punctual at a meeting, somebody called, or if you honor someone's deadlines, when you ask for their attendance or their contribution to a project, they're going to be much more apt to follow through because you honored their time. We've covered a lot of territory, and I'm going to encourage you to kind of think about, after this webinar is finished, which are the areas that you need to take action on. And again, if you'd like more information, please ask. Today is the first day of the rest of your life. Hopefully today you've learned how to choose to live it and not waste it. I'd be happy and I'd be honored to inspire your team, whether it's your department, whether it's a group of leaders, maybe it's a project team. This is also a great project management workshop, and I've given you the program description for that. And if you'd like, as I mentioned, request a free sample of the online profile, or better yet, just order one and you'll experience it for yourself. Our next month's webinars are scheduled, and the last page in your handout has our schedule, again, repeated twice at 9 and 10:30. Next month, join us for Listening is a Gift. Any questions, please call or email us. We'd love to hear from you. And like I said, your feedback matters. After this webinar, you'll be asked to fill out a brief survey. offer comments, suggestions, or those requests, and we'll be happy to follow up with you. But in closing, I want to thank you for making time in your busy schedule to learn how to manage your time with less stress. Make it a great day for yourself and others. Bye for now.